They told me my sister was dead. And for 3 years, I believed them. I went to her funeral. I stood beside her coffin, a closed one, and cried until my throat was raw. I helped plan the service, picked out the flowers she would have liked, and even made sure her favorite hymn, Abide With Me, was sung. I mourned her. I grieved her. And then, one night, 3 years later, I heard her laughter through the wall. It was faint, muffled, but it was hers. That soft, husky laugh that always rose into a snort when she couldn't stop herself. The laugh that used to fill our kitchen when we were kids. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I even laughed at myself, shaking my head as I poured another cup of tea. But the sound came again, clearer this time, and my heart stopped. I remember standing completely still in my small apartment, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the silence that followed. Then came the laughter again, followed by the muffled voice of a man saying something I couldn't make out. My cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I froze. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't be her. I pressed my ear against the thin wall that separated my kitchen from the next apartment. The walls in this old building were so thin, you could hear a neighbor sneeze 2 doors down. And there it was, her voice. Low, warm, familiar. Stop it, I'll burn the rice, she said, laughing again. The air went out of my lungs. I knew that voice. I knew it the way you know your own heartbeat. For a moment, the world went quiet, not the kind of silence that comforts you, but the kind that presses down on your chest. I sank to the floor, my palms flat against the cold tiles. 3 years. 3 years I'd lived with the weight of her loss. 3 years I'd comforted her daughters, told them stories of their mother's kindness, promised them she was watching over them from heaven. 3 years I'd cried on anniversaries and birthdays, lighting candles for a ghost. And now I was hearing her laugh through my kitchen wall. Her name was Clara. She was my older sister by 6 years, sharp, beautiful, magnetic in a way I never was. People gravitated to her. Even as children, she was the sun everyone orbited. I was the quiet one, the helper, the listener, the one who picked up the pieces after her messes. When our parents died within months of each other, Clara had 2 girls, Ava and Grace, and a husband, Daniel. I had no one but her. So when she died in that car crash on Route 16, a part of me died with her. I'd spent those 3 years trying to rebuild what was left of our family, raising my nieces, paying the bills, helping Daniel keep the house from falling apart. And now, this. The laugh. The impossible sound. The ghost that wasn't a ghost. The night I heard it, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch in my robe until dawn, staring at the wall that separated our 2 apartments. By morning, I had convinced myself I was losing my mind. Grief can do that to you. It can trick you into hearing voices, seeing faces in shadows. So, I decided to prove it wasn't real. At 8 a.m., I stood outside my neighbor's door, apartment 3B. I'd never met them. They'd moved in 2 months ago, right after the older couple before them sold the unit. I knocked. No answer. I waited. Then knocked again, louder. Nothing. But I heard movement, the scrape of a chair, a whisper, and then footsteps retreating. Hello. I called softly. I'm your neighbor from next door. Sorry to bother you. Silence. And then a voice. Muffled, guarded. Just a minute. The door opened a crack. A woman stood there, mid-30s, hair pulled back in a scarf, eyes cautious. Yes, she said. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Even under the dim hallway light, I recognized her, the curve of her jaw, the faint scar above her eyebrow, the birthmark on her neck. Clara, I whispered. The woman froze. Her lips parted, and for a moment, something flickered in her eyes, guilt, fear, recognition. Then, she shook her head. I'm sorry, you've got the wrong person. But I knew. I knew. I took a step forward, my voice trembling. Clara, it's me. It's June. The door slammed shut. For a long time, I just stood there, my hand still raised, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. Behind the door, I heard muffled voices, a man's low tone, her sharp whisper. I wanted to bang on the door, scream, demand an explanation. But instead, I turned and walked back to my apartment, my mind spinning, my throat tight. I sat on my couch for hours, trying to understand what I'd just seen. If it was her, if my sister had truly faked her death, then everything we'd buried, everything we'd rebuilt, had been built on a lie. But why? Why would she do that? Why would she abandon her children? Why would she let me, her sister, mourn her for 3 long years? The questions looped endlessly, and by the time evening came, I felt hollowed out. I decided not to tell anyone yet. Not Daniel. Not the girls. Not even my closest friend, Miriam, who'd stood beside me at the funeral. I needed proof. Real proof, not just a fleeting glimpse and a voice through a wall. So I began watching. Listening. Every evening, I'd sit in my kitchen with the lights off, ear pressed to the thin drywall, notebook open. Sometimes I'd hear faint conversation, laughter, music, a kettle whistling. Once, I heard her humming "Abide with Me." That was the night I started crying so hard, I couldn't hold the pen. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. And then, one night, I heard the front door next door open and close. I peeked through my peephole. She was there. My sister, Clara, wearing a coat I'd seen before, back before she died. The same grey wool one I'd helped her pick out on her birthday. She walked down the hall with a man I didn't recognize, tall, thin, nervous-looking. They laughed softly together, their shoulders brushing as they walked toward the stairwell. I didn't follow. Not yet. But my hands were shaking so badly I could hardly lock my own door. The next morning, I went to the building manager's office under the pretense of asking about a plumbing issue. "Who's renting 3B now?" I asked casually, pretending to glance through the tenant list on the counter. He frowned. That's the Wilkins couple, I think. Moved in early this year." "Why?" "Just wondering," I said quickly. He shrugged. "Nice folks. Keep to themselves. Wilkins. That wasn't her name. That wasn't her anything." I thanked him and left, my mind swirling. That night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I went next door again, this time, not to ask, but to confront. I waited until I heard voices inside, hers and the man's, then I knocked. No response. I knocked again, harder. The door creaked open an inch. Her voice came through, wary. "Who is it?" "It's me," I said. "June." Silence. Then, slowly, she opened the door wider. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face thinner than I remembered, but it was her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with 3 years of grief, lies, and something else I couldn't name. Finally, she whispered, "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," I said quietly. We stared at each other. She looked exhausted. Guilty. But alive. And suddenly, all the anger I'd been rehearsing vanished. I just stepped forward and, before I could stop myself, wrapped my arms around her. For a moment, she stiffened. Then she broke. Her body trembled, and she clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder. When she finally pulled away, she said, "You can't tell anyone. Please." "Not yet." I looked at her, searching for the truth in her face. "Clara, everyone thinks you're dead. Your daughters think you're dead. You have to explain." "Not here," she interrupted, glancing over her shoulder. "His inside." "Who?" "My husband." I blinked. "You're what?" Her eyes filled with tears again. "I'll tell you everything. Tomorrow. Meet me at the cafe on Miller Street at 10. And then, before I could say another word, she closed the door. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the words "my husband" echoing in my head. She had a husband. A new name. A new life. And she'd left us all to grieve her. The rage came in waves, hot and blinding. But beneath it, something else stirred, relief. She was alive. My sister was alive. And I didn't know whether to thank God or curse him for it. Before all of this, before the coffin, the lies, and the laughter through the wall, life was simple, or at least it felt that way. Back then, Clara was the one who knew how to make everything glow. She had this way of making ordinary days feel like little celebrations. Even the smallest things, grocery shopping, baking, rearranging the furniture, became stories. When our parents died, I was 33 and still finding my footing. Clara was already married with 2 daughters, Ava and Grace. She stepped into that eldest sibling role effortlessly, like she always did. Strong, decisive, full of opinions, always moving. And I was quieter. I'd always been the observer. The one people confided in but rarely looked at twice. Where Clara was sunlight, I was the window it passed through, invisible, but still holding the warmth. After our mother's funeral, Clara had hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe and whispered, "We're all we've got now." And I believed her. We talked every day. She'd call me from her car on the way to work, or while stirring dinner. I'd hear Grace's giggles in the background, Ava's teenage sighs, Daniel's voice drifting in from another room. "Don't you ever get tired, Clara?" I asked her once. "Of what?" "Of holding everything together." She laughed. "If I don't, who will?" It was the kind of answer that seemed noble at the time, but in hindsight, I hear the strain beneath it. When she died, I was the one who identified her belongings. A twisted metal car frame. A purse soaked in gasoline. A wallet with her driver's license. The police said her car had gone off the bridge late at night, that the current was too strong for divers to recover everything. The coffin was closed. We had to take their word for it. Grief fogged everything after that. Days melted into each other, funeral arrangements, casseroles, condolences. People saying she's in a better place now, as if that fixed anything. Daniel was hollow-eyed but polite. The girls clung to me like I was the last familiar thing left in the world. That's when I moved in with them. Just until we find our rhythm again, I told myself. But grief has no rhythm. It's just silence and echoes and chores you keep doing because stopping would mean collapsing. Daniel wasn't unkind, just distant. He worked long hours at the hardware store, came home late, and ate in silence. I didn't pry. Everyone grieves differently. The girls adjusted slowly. Ava, 15, retreated into headphones and sketchbooks. Grace, 9, asked questions no one could answer. "Do you think Mom watches us from heaven?" "I think she's close," I said, forcing a smile. "Closer than you think." I meant it, too. I wanted to believe that love, once rooted, couldn't be erased by death. The first year was the hardest. The second was a little easier, though the house still felt heavy. By the third, things started to settle into something resembling normal. I got a job at the local library, part-time, quiet, safe. The girls were thriving again. Daniel began to smile occasionally. There were moments when I thought, maybe this is what healing looks like. I rented an apartment nearby, 2 floors up in an old brick building downtown. Close enough to see the girls often, far enough to feel like I had my own space again. I decorated it with thrift furniture, photos of my family, and little touches of Clara, a ceramic bowl she once gave me, a framed postcard she sent years ago from Cape May. I even started hosting Sunday dinners again, trying to keep her traditions alive. Then came the phone call. It was from the funeral home, about some paperwork updates. I drove there with my chest tight, expecting bureaucracy, not ghosts. The man at the desk, kind but distracted, said, "We're updating digital records, just confirming your sister's date of death was March 12th, correct?" "Yes," I said. He typed for a moment. Then frowned. "That's strange. There's a note here that her file was reaccessed a few months ago." My pulse quickened. Reaccessed? Yes, it says someone requested her death certificate and certified copy of her signature release. "Do you know who that might have been?" I blinked. "No." He smiled apologetically. "Could just be a bank or insurance claim, happens sometimes. Nothing to worry about. But I did worry. Because Clara never had life insurance. That night, I found myself sitting by my window, staring at the city lights and wondering, for the first time, if something had been off all along. If maybe she hadn't died the way they said she did. But how do you even ask a question like that? You risk sounding delusional. Grief and paranoia can look the same from the outside. So, I buried the thought. Until the laughter. Now, looking back, I can see the small oddities I missed. How Daniel avoided the topic of the crash entirely. How her bank account had closed unusually fast. How the police never showed us a body, only her license and her wedding ring. How her best friend, Lila, stopped speaking to me a month after the funeral. At the time, I chalked it up to grief. People drift. But after hearing her voice through that wall, every detail snapped into a new, chilling clarity. The morning after our hallway encounter, I walked into the cafe on Miller Street early. It was a small place, honey-colored wood tables, the scent of cinnamon and espresso heavy in the air. The kind of place Clara and I used to linger for hours, splitting one pastry and 5 refills. When the door opened and she walked in, the world tilted again. Her hair was shorter now, dyed a soft chestnut. She wore simple clothes, jeans, a cream sweater, but there was something tense in her movements, like she was bracing for impact. "June," she said softly, sliding into the booth across from me. For a while, we just stared. The cafe hum faded around us. Then she whispered, "I didn't think you'd actually come." "I almost didn't," I said. "You died, Clara. I buried you. Do you understand what that did to us?" Her eyes glistened. "I know. I know what I did. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make sense of it. But please let me explain." I nodded, my hands trembling as I wrapped them around my coffee cup. She took a breath. "After Mom and Dad died, I started drowning in debt. The medical bills, the house, Daniel's business loans, everything fell on me. I was too proud to ask for help. I thought I could fix it quietly. I stayed silent, letting her speak. One night, I got a call from someone I used to work with. He offered me a way out, a job in another state, under a new name. But to take it, I had to disappear. No debt collectors, no questions." Her voice cracked. "So I did something unforgivable. I left everything, even the girls. I thought, if everyone believed I was gone, they'd move on without the burden of me." "You faked your death," I said quietly. She nodded, tears spilling over. "I know. It was selfish. But I was terrified. I thought it was mercy. I wanted to scream at her. To ask how she could leave her children to grieve a ghost, how she could let me hold their hands at her funeral knowing she was alive somewhere, cooking dinner with strangers. But I didn't. Because looking at her, I saw not the woman I'd buried, but someone broken in a different way. And part of me, despite everything, still loved her. "You should have trusted me," I said finally. "We could have faced it together." Her lip trembled. "I didn't want to drag you down too. That's what family is for." She looked down. "I know that now. But it's too late to undo what I did." The conversation drifted to the practical, how she managed to vanish, how she'd paid someone to forge records, how the crash had been staged using a stolen vehicle. She'd spent a year working under a false name before settling back in the city under her new identity, Clara Wilkins. When I asked about the man from the apartment, her face softened. "His name's Mark. He doesn't know the truth. He thinks my family died in an accident years ago. I wanted to start over, June. I wanted to be someone else." My stomach churned. "So you built a new life right next to mine?" She winced. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I didn't know you lived here until after we moved in. I almost left the moment I realized." "Why didn't you?" Her eyes filled again. "Because I missed you." We sat there in silence. And then she reached across the table, her hand trembling. "You don't have to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you. But please don't tell the girls yet. Not until I figure out how to face them." I wanted to hate her. But my heart had other ideas. I can't promise that, I said softly. They deserve the truth. She nodded, swallowing hard. Then give me a little time. Please. When we stood to leave, she hugged me again, tentative, careful, as if afraid I might vanish this time. Outside, the winter sun was pale and weak. As she walked away, blending into the crowd, I felt something strange settle in my chest, grief and relief, braided together. The kind of feeling that only comes when the dead turn out to be alive. For the first few days after our meeting, I couldn't stop replaying every word of that conversation in my head. I didn't want to drag you down too. He thinks my family died in an accident. I missed you. Each line tugged at a different part of me: anger, confusion, sorrow, love. I wanted to believe her. I truly did. But forgiveness has a strange way of dragging its feet behind disbelief. Every time I looked at the framed photo of her, the one from her last birthday before she died, standing between the girls with frosting on her cheek, my stomach twisted. She had erased herself from us. And now she was back, quietly, like she had the right to walk through a door we'd already sealed shut. The following week, she didn't call. No message. No knock. No sign. If I hadn't seen her that morning at the cafe, I might have believed I'd imagined it all. Until small things began to happen. A letter slipped under my door, blank envelope, no return address. Inside, a single Polaroid of Ava and Grace at their school carnival 2 years ago. I recognized my own handwriting on the corner where I'd written the date. But the handwriting was traced over, the lines pressed harder, shakier. Hers. No note. No explanation. Just that picture. A few days later, I noticed someone leaving flowers by the girls' old house, the one Daniel still owned. I was dropping off groceries when I saw them, a small bouquet of lilies, wrapped in brown paper. Daniel was out front, trimming the hedge. He looked up when I froze. What's wrong? Those flowers, I said, pointing. He followed my gaze. Oh. Yeah, someone's been leaving them every few weeks. Same kind, same wrapping. Probably one of her old friends. Have you checked who? He shrugged. Why would I? It's a nice gesture. Nice gesture. If only he knew. That night, I went back to my apartment, shut the door, and leaned against it, my pulse loud in my ears. She was watching us. Not just existing quietly next door, she was watching. The realization made my skin crawl. Was this her way of reconnecting? Or was she testing the waters before coming back into our lives? Either way, it wasn't fair. The girls deserved honesty. And Daniel, well, he deserved the truth, too. But the truth in this family had a habit of cutting deep. By the end of the month, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. So I went back to apartment 3B. This time, when she opened the door, she looked startled and thinner, if that was possible. June, she said, stepping aside quickly. Come in. The apartment was sparsely furnished, a small couch, a worn coffee table, the faint smell of curry in the air. On the counter sat 2 mugs, a half-finished puzzle, and a stack of unopened mail. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I thought we agreed. I need to understand, I interrupted. Why come back here? Why not anywhere else? She sighed, sinking into the couch. Because it's home. Even if I can't be part of it anymore. That's not an answer. Her fingers fidgeted with her sleeve. I thought, maybe I could just see them. Once in a while. Without ruining everything. You've already ruined everything, I said quietly. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't argue. I sat across from her, studying her face. The more I looked, the more I saw traces of the sister I'd grown up with, the same nervous habit of tugging at her nails, the way she tilted her head slightly when thinking. But there was something else now. A restlessness. Does Daniel know? I asked. Her silence was answer enough. Clara, I said, my voice hardening. You can't keep hiding forever. You have 2 daughters who. Don't, she cut in sharply, her tone trembling. Don't say their names. Please. I stared at her. You're scared? Yes, she whispered. Because if I tell the truth, I'll lose everything again. You already did, I said. You just haven't realized it yet. We sat there in silence until she spoke again, her voice softer this time. Mark doesn't know anything. He thinks I'm a widow. I told him I lost my family in a fire. I know it's wrong. I didn't know how to live with the truth anymore. The lie sat between us like a shadow. So, what happens when he finds out? She shook her head. He won't. But I could see the fear in her eyes, the kind that knows secrets have expiration dates. That night, when I went home, I couldn't eat. Couldn't read. Couldn't even pray. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Clara wasn't done hiding, and I wasn't done uncovering. A few days later, I stopped by Daniel's house to check on Grace, who'd come down with the flu. He greeted me with a tired smile. Hey, come in. She's on the couch watching TV. As I stepped inside, I noticed something on the entry table, a small envelope, hand-addressed. The handwriting was unmistakable. Clara's. Before I could stop myself, I picked it up. Who's this from? I asked casually. Oh, he said, that. Weirdest thing, it was just in the mailbox this morning. No return address. I haven't opened it yet. Mind if I do? He frowned but shrugged. Go ahead. I tore it open slowly. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper, written in her neat, looping cursive. Dear Daniel. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know what I did destroyed you. But please believe me when I say it wasn't about you. I wasn't running from love, I was running from myself. Take care of the girls. Don't tell them I wrote. It's better they keep remembering me the way I was. See. My throat closed. Daniel stared at it for a long time, his face unreadable. Do you think this is a prank? He asked finally. No, I said. He turned to me sharply. Then what are you saying? I hesitated, then said the only thing I could. I think Clara might still be alive. He laughed at first, a short, disbelieving sound. But when I didn't join in, his expression changed. That's impossible, he said. I thought so too, I whispered. Until I saw her. The silence that followed was deafening. He stared at me for a long time, his jaw tight. If this is some twisted way of coping, June. It's not. I spoke to her. His eyes darkened. Where? I swallowed. She lives next door to me. Apartment 3B. He stood there, pale as a ghost. Then he said, show me. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed that this would end badly, but the truth had lived too long in shadows. So I led him back to my building, my pulse thrumming in my ears. When we reached her door, I knocked once, then twice. No answer. Daniel clenched his fists. Open it. Maybe she's not. Before I could finish, he pounded on the door. Clara. Inside. Movement. Then silence. Clara, it's me, he said, his voice breaking. Please. I just want to see you. The door opened a crack. She appeared in the narrow gap, her face pale, eyes wide. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Daniel whispered, you're alive. The air in that hallway felt electric, charged with disbelief, betrayal, and a grief reborn. She didn't speak. Didn't try to defend herself. She just looked at him and whispered, I'm sorry. He laughed, not the good kind. The hollow, disbelieving kind that comes from something breaking inside. You died, Clara, he said, his voice raw. I buried you. Our daughters. I know, she said softly, her tears falling freely now. I know what I did. He stepped back, shaking his head. You don't. You can't. And then he walked away. She didn't follow. Neither did I. That night, I found her sitting on the stairs outside the building, her face hidden in her hands. When she saw me, she said quietly, he hates me. He's allowed to, I said. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I don't blame him. Then what now? Her voice trembled. Now. I tell the girls. They deserve to hear it from me. Are you sure? Yes, she said, exhaling shakily. I can't keep living like this. Maybe I don't deserve forgiveness, but I owe them the truth. I looked at her, at the sister I'd lost twice, once to death, once to lies, and I felt the smallest flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, truth could do what lies never could. Heal. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of what was coming. Clara's promise to tell the girls had cracked something open in all of us. For 3 years, grief had been a blanket that dulled the edges of life. Now, the truth was ripping that blanket away, exposing everything raw beneath it. And I didn't know if my nieces could survive losing their mother again. She chose a Sunday. I'll come by in the afternoon, she said quietly over the phone. When they're both home. Her voice was trembling. Mine wasn't much steadier. Daniel didn't say much when I told him. He just nodded, staring at the floor. If she wants to tell them, fine. But I won't help her lie anymore. He didn't come that day. Said he couldn't bear to see her. So it was just me, Ava, Grace, and the ghost of a woman walking back into her old life. The house felt smaller than I remembered. Maybe because I was holding my breath the whole time. Ava was at the kitchen table, sketching. Grace was sprawled on the rug, her math workbook open, humming softly. When the doorbell rang, the sound cut through the air like a blade. I'll get it, I said quickly. My hand hesitated on the knob. I looked back at them one last time, at the innocence that wouldn't survive the next 5 minutes, and opened the door. Clara stood there. Same sweater. Same haunted eyes. She clutched a folded piece of paper, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it. Are they? She whispered. They're here, I said. Her breath hitched. She stepped inside. When Ava looked up, she froze. At first, confusion. Then disbelief. Mom, she whispered. Grace's pencil rolled off the table. What? Clara took a step forward, tears streaming down her face. Hi, baby. The silence that followed could have split the walls. Ava stood, her chair scraping loudly. This isn't funny, she said. Who is this? It's me, Clara whispered. I'm so sorry. Stop. Ava's voice cracked. You're dead. You died. I know, Clara said, voice breaking. I made you believe that, and I'll never forgive myself for it. Grace's little voice trembled. You were gone. We buried you. Clara dropped to her knees, sobbing. I know, sweetie. I know. But I'm here now. I never stopped loving you. Ava turned to me, eyes wild. You knew. The words hit like a slap. Yes, I whispered. I found out recently. Her face twisted. And you didn't tell us? I wanted her to. To what? She shouted. To lie to us again. The anger pouring out of her was the kind born from 3 years of heartbreak. Grace burst into tears and ran upstairs. Ava stayed frozen, shaking, tears cutting down her cheeks. How could you? She whispered. How could either of you? Clara tried to reach for her, but Ava backed away. Don't touch me, she said, her voice trembling. You left us. You let us think you were dead. You ruined everything. Clara's sobs filled the room. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you'd be better off. Without you. Ava's voice cracked again. Maybe we were. Then she turned and ran upstairs, slamming her door so hard the picture frames rattled. For a long time, Clara stayed on her knees, crying silently into her hands. I wanted to comfort her, I really did, but a small, cruel voice inside me whispered, You made this bed, now lie in it. Instead, I said softly, Give them time. She looked up, her face blotched and broken. They hate me. They're hurt. There's a difference. I don't deserve their forgiveness. No, I said, but you can earn it. The next few weeks were a blur of aftermath. Daniel found out about the visit through Ava, who, to no one's surprise, told him everything. He called me first, furious. "You should have stopped her," he said. "She's turned the girls' lives upside down again." "She had to tell them," I said. "No. She wanted to feel better." "That's not the same thing." I couldn't argue with that. Grace refused to talk to anyone for days. She stopped eating, barely slept, kept asking questions like, "If she's alive, does that mean heaven's not real?" Ava, on the other hand, swung between fury and silence. She started skipping school. I'd find her in the park some afternoons, sketching alone, face streaked with tears she didn't want anyone to see. "I can't forgive her," she said once, voice flat. "I can't even look at her picture anymore." I didn't know what to say. And then came the letter. Clara slipped it under my door one morning, addressed to the girls. "My loves. I can't ask you to understand, but I need you to know the truth. When I left, I was drowning. I thought I was protecting you from my failures, from the mess I'd made. But I was wrong. I only left you with pain. If you never want to see me again, I'll respect that. Just know that I never stopped thinking of you. Every birthday, every holiday, every night. I'll be nearby if you ever need me. But I won't force my way back in. Mom." I read it twice before giving it to them. Ava didn't react. Grace cried again. But when Grace whispered, "Can I write her back?" Ava just said, "Do what you want," and walked away. Weeks passed before anything changed. Then, one Sunday evening, I heard a knock at my door. It was Grace. "I went to see her," she said quietly. My heart skipped. "And?" "She cried the whole time." "Did you talk?" Grace nodded. "I told her I missed her, but I'm still mad." "That's okay," I said softly. "You can be both." She looked up. "Can I go again tomorrow?" I nodded. And that's how it started, one cautious step at a time. Ava, though, stayed away. She couldn't even say her mother's name without flinching. One night, she came by to drop off some books I'd lent her. She lingered at the doorway, her eyes rimmed red. "She wants to see you," I said gently. "I know," she said. I can't. Not yet." "Because you hate her." No, a tear slipped down her cheek. "Because I still love her." The next day, Clara showed up at my door again, her face pale and worn. "I think Ava's avoiding me," she said softly. "She is," I replied. "She's scared." "Of what?" "Of losing you again." Her lips quivered. "I won't leave this time." "Then prove it." Over the next few months, she did. Slowly, carefully, she began mending the damage, not with grand gestures, but with presence. She left small things for the girls, a favorite book, a scarf Grace had lost years ago, a handwritten recipe Ava once loved. At first, the girls ignored them. Then one day, I noticed Ava wearing the scarf. Little by little, the silence between them softened. But secrets, once unearthed, rarely stay buried. The truth about Clara spread through town like wildfire. It started with whispers, people who claimed they'd seen her, the dead woman who came back. Then it hit social media. Someone posted an old photo of her with the caption, "She's alive." The story spiraled out of control, news outlets, gossip pages, neighbors knocking at Daniel's door. By the end of the week, Clara's name was everywhere. Disgraced mother fakes death to escape debts. Small-town tragedy or selfish scandal. Everyone had an opinion. Daniel called me again, his voice hard. "This is what I was afraid of," he said. "The girls are getting harassed at school. Reporters showed up at my work. She's turned our grief into a circus." "She didn't plan for this," I said. "Didn't she?" "She's always been about control. Even in death, she had to be the center of everything. That's not fair. Neither was what she did." He hung up before I could answer. The next evening, I found Clara sitting alone on the steps outside her building, a newspaper folded beside her. "They called me a monster," she said quietly. "They don't know you," I replied. Her eyes filled. "Maybe they do." I sat beside her. You can't change what people say. You can only live in a way that proves them wrong. She gave a shaky laugh. You sound like Mom. Someone has to. Eventually, the frenzy faded. People moved on to newer scandals. But the family didn't forget. Grace saw her regularly now, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just to talk. Ava kept her distance but began answering her texts, short and cautious. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. One afternoon, months later, we were all together again in my apartment. The girls, Clara, and me. It wasn't planned. Grace had brought her over unannounced. When I opened the door and saw Clara standing there, I froze for a heartbeat, then stepped aside. The four of us sat around my kitchen table, the same one I'd bought secondhand the year after her death. The silence was thick but not unbearable. Ava broke it first. You look older. Clara smiled faintly. I feel it. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Ava said quietly. I don't expect you to, Clara replied. I just want a chance to show you who I am now. Ava looked down at her hands, then back at her mother. Then start by staying. The moment hung in the air, fragile, hopeful. And for the first time in years, I saw something in Clara's face I hadn't seen since before the lies. Peace. It's strange how peace doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with music or bright light, just a quiet shift, like air after rain. That's how the weeks after that day felt. Still fragile, but lighter. The girls started visiting their mother more regularly. Not every day, some days ended in tears, others in silence, but they came. And that was something. As for me, I found myself caught in the middle of everything. Mediator. Buffer. The sister who'd once buried a coffin that held nothing but a lie, now trying to help that same lie find its way home again. I didn't resent it, but it wore on me. Every time I saw Clara and the girls together, I felt that old ache, the years that had been stolen from them, from us. Years I'd spent trying to fill shoes that were never mine to wear. One afternoon, I found Clara standing in my kitchen, staring at a photo on the fridge, the four of us, back when life was simple. Her eyes lingered on our parents. Do you think they'd forgive me? I think they'd be sad, I said softly. But forgiveness was always easier for them than for the rest of us. She smiled faintly. Mom used to say, you can't hold water in a clenched fist. I nodded. And yet we both tried. She reached out, touching the photo gently. I keep dreaming about them. About that last night before I left. I can't remember what I said to you. I swallowed. You didn't say goodbye. That night, I went for a walk. The streets were quiet, the kind of stillness that only small towns get after sunset. I passed by Daniel's house. The curtains were drawn, lights off except for one dim lamp in the living room. Through the thin veil of light, I could see him sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. He hadn't spoken to Clara since the day she told the girls. I wanted to believe that time might soften him, but every time I caught his expression at school pickups or in town, I knew better. Some wounds close, others calcify. A few days later, Clara asked if I'd come with her to the grocery store. It was the first time she'd gone out without disguises, no sunglasses, no headscarf. I'm tired of hiding, she said. Inside, I could feel the stares. People whispered, their eyes flicking toward her and then quickly away. She held her head high, but I could see the strain in the set of her jaw. When we reached the checkout line, the cashier hesitated before scanning our items. I'm sorry, the young woman said softly. You look so much like. I know, Clara interrupted gently. I get that a lot. The girl flushed, muttered an apology, and went back to scanning. When we stepped outside, Clara exhaled shakily. They all know. Yes, I said. But that's okay. Let them talk. At least you're alive to hear it. She gave me a look, one that was half amusement, half sorrow. You always did find a way to turn pain into poetry. Occupational hazard of being the sensible sister. It wasn't long before the whispers turned to questions. One Sunday after church, a woman from the congregation, Mrs. Kendall, cornered me near the exit. "June," she said, lowering her voice, "is it true? About your sister?" I met her gaze. "Yes." She blinked. "But how could she do such a thing?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I think the better question is, how do we move forward now that we know?" Mrs. Kendall frowned, not expecting that answer. She gave a small, disapproving shake of her head before walking away. I watched her go, realizing that forgiveness, to most people, is a concept easier spoken than practiced. Later that week, Clara was invited, if you could call it that, to a town meeting. Apparently, a few community members wanted clarity about the insurance investigation from her staged death. She almost didn't go. "They'll eat me alive," she said, sitting at my table, twisting a napkin between her fingers. "Then speak your truth before they do," I told her. She stared at me for a long time, then nodded. "Will you come?" "Always." The town hall smelled of coffee and unease. She stood at the front, shoulders straight but voice trembling. Her confession was short, stripped of excuses. "I lied," she said simply. "I hurt people I love. I thought I was saving them from the wreckage I'd created, but I only made it worse. I'm not asking for your sympathy, just your understanding that what I did came from fear, not cruelty." The silence afterward was heavy. Then someone in the back muttered, "Fear doesn't fake funerals." Clara flinched, but kept her gaze steady. "You're right," she said. "It doesn't. Cowardice does. And I was a coward." A long pause followed before someone, an older man, started clapping softly. Then another joined. Not everyone applauded. But enough did to make her cry. After the meeting, she stepped outside into the cool evening air, wiping her eyes. "You did it," I said quietly. She nodded, voice shaking. "It feels like I buried the lie tonight." The next day, the local paper ran a small piece, nothing sensational this time. "Woman who faked death addresses town. I was afraid, not evil." It wasn't redemption, but it was something close. The following weekend, Daniel called me. His voice was different, quieter. "I saw the article," he said. "She sounded sincere." "She is," I said. He was silent for a long time. "The girls want me to come when she sees them next." "I'm thinking about it. That would mean a lot to them." "I'm not doing it for her," he said. "I know." But I could tell a small part of him had started to thaw. When they finally met, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no tears. Just two people standing in the same room for the first time in years, unsure how to breathe. He spoke first. "You look tired." She gave a weak smile. "You always did hate my hair short." He laughed once, softly, the sound of something being released. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," he said. "I wouldn't ask you to," she replied. "But the girls love you. That's enough reason for me to try." She cried then, not loudly, but like a door had finally opened inside her. Afterward, she came to my apartment and sat in the same chair she'd once hidden behind, 3 years earlier. "I feel like I can breathe again," she said. "Because of him. Because I stopped running." That night, we sat on my balcony with mugs of tea, the city quiet around us. "Do you ever think about what life would have been like if you hadn't left?" I asked. "All the time," she said. "But I think I had to lose everything to understand what I'd had." She turned to me, eyes soft. "I don't know if I can ever make it up to you." "You can start," I said, smiling faintly, "by not dying again." She laughed, that same husky laugh that had haunted me through the wall years ago. This time, it didn't break me. It healed me. Weeks rolled into months, and slowly, life found its rhythm again. Ava started art school in the fall. Grace joined the debate team. Daniel began seeing someone new, a quiet woman from his office who treated the girls kindly. Clara didn't protest. "She deserves peace too," she said one evening, helping me fold laundry. "We all do." One morning, I found an envelope on my doorstep, no name, just a simple wax seal. Inside was a photo, the four of us, sitting at my kitchen table that day. Clara had written on the back in her neat handwriting, "Sometimes forgiveness doesn't sound like I forgive you. Sometimes it's just showing up again." I placed it on the fridge beside the old family photo, the past and present finally sharing the same space. When winter came, I hosted Christmas dinner. The table was full again, the girls, Daniel, his new partner, and Clara. It wasn't perfect. There were long pauses, quiet moments that used to be filled with laughter. But there was warmth. And that was enough. As we finished dessert, Clara raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said softly. I looked around the table at faces that had aged through grief and grown through truth and said, "To survival." Because that's what we were now. Survivors. After everyone left, Clara stayed behind to help me clean. At one point, she stopped and said, "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing everything?" I nodded. "Every day." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's what keeps us honest." Later that night, as I stood at the sink washing the last dish, I heard something behind me, the faintest echo of laughter. Hers. Except this time, I didn't freeze or question it. I just smiled, because it wasn't coming through the wall anymore. It was here in the room, in my life, where it belonged. By spring, the town had quieted. Not forgotten, small towns never forget, but they had shifted their gaze elsewhere. A new scandal, a new tragedy, a new whisper to feed on. But some things linger even after the gossip dies. For Clara, it was the lingering glances in the grocery store, the half-smiles at church that didn't quite reach people's eyes, the way conversations dipped when she walked into the bakery. For the girls, it was the classmates who still whispered behind notebooks. The cruel jokes about their mother being the ghost who came back. And for me, it was the ache of watching them all navigate the fragile, unspoken line between shame and healing. One Sunday morning, Clara showed up at my apartment dressed in a pale blue dress, her hair pinned back simply. "I'm going back to church," she said. I paused. "Are you sure?" She smiled faintly. "If they're going to talk about me, I'd rather they do it while I'm there." She had a way of turning fear into humor now, soft, dry, almost weary but braver for it. When we arrived, heads turned. The pastor's wife, kind but cautious, hugged her first. "It's good to see you, Clara." That broke the tension. A few others nodded, some smiled politely. And though there were a handful who folded their arms and refused to meet her eyes, she didn't falter. When the choir began to sing Amazing Grace, she closed her eyes and whispered every word. I think that was the first time she'd let herself weep without apology. After the service, she stood outside beneath the oak tree that shaded the church steps. A man approached old Mr. Dalton, who had known our parents for years. He was never one for gentleness, but when he looked at her, his voice softened. "I lost my brother once," he said quietly. "Didn't fake his death, but he might as well have left home, disappeared, came back 10 years later. Took me a long time to forgive him. Too long." Clara met his gaze, eyes glistening. "Did you ever get over it?" He smiled sadly. "No. But I learned to live around it." Then he patted her shoulder and walked away. Sometimes, grace looks nothing like forgiveness. Sometimes, it's just letting someone stand on the same ground again. Over the next few months, she started volunteering at the local library, a small thing, but it mattered. The head librarian, Mrs. Jenkins, was skeptical at first. "I can't have trouble follow my shelves," she said wryly. Clara just smiled. "Don't worry. I'm done running from my overdue accounts." It took Mrs. Jenkins exactly 2 weeks to warm up to her. By summer, Clara was leading children's reading hours, her voice gentle, animated, full of the warmth that once defined her. Grace came to help sometimes, and you could see how proud she was, how much she'd missed that version of her mother. Ava took longer. She'd gone off to college by then, 2 towns over. Her phone calls were short but steady, one-word answers at first, then full sentences, then cautious questions. Once, she asked me, "Do you think people can start over, or do they just pretend to?" I said, "Starting over isn't pretending. It's surviving." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Maybe I'll visit next weekend." When she did, I watched from my kitchen window as she stepped out of the car and saw her mother standing on the porch. They didn't rush into each other's arms. They just really looked, and then Ava took one small step forward. That was enough. But peace in a small town doesn't come without resistance. There were still people who couldn't stand the idea that someone could make such a mistake and still get to live among them. They called it hypocrisy. I called it humanity. One afternoon, while Clara was helping at the library, a woman confronted her, the type who loved the sound of her own moral superiority. "You think people just forget what you did," she hissed. "You think you can walk around like nothing happened?" Clara didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "No. I walk around because something did." It disarmed the woman completely. Later that night, Clara told me about it, laughing softly. Old me would have cried. Or begged. "I guess I finally grew a spine." "You always had one," I said. "You just forgot how to use it." Daniel began to loosen, too. The girl's stability helped, and maybe time had worked its quiet magic. He started letting Clara pick the girls up on weekends. They'd grab lunch together, sometimes even visit me afterward, a new rhythm that felt strangely natural. One afternoon, when he dropped them off, he waited on my porch while Clara said goodbye inside. When she stepped out, their eyes met for a moment too long. "I never thought I'd see the day we'd both stand here like this," he said. "Neither did I," she replied softly. He nodded once. "You hurt me more than anyone ever has. But I can't hate you anymore. I'm just tired." "Me too," she said. "But maybe tired is where healing begins." The seasons changed again. The gossip finally died. By the next year, Clara's story had become something different, not scandal, not spectacle. Just a quiet legend people referred to when talking about mistakes and mercy. "She's the woman who faked her death, right?" they'd whisper. And someone else would shrug and say, "Yeah, but she's all right now. Works at the library. Keeps to herself." And that was the kind of redemption she'd wanted all along, not glory, not pity. Just ordinariness. One morning, she invited me over for tea. Her apartment was different now, cozy, full of light, the walls lined with framed photographs. The girls, my parents, even one of the three of us as children on a summer porch swing. She poured the tea, her hands steady for once. "I used to dream of leaving this town," she said. "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." "Because it forgave you?" She smiled. "Because I forgave myself." We talked for hours. About our parents. About the years we'd lost. At one point, she said, "You know, when I was gone, I used to picture you sitting by the window, looking out, waiting for me." I laughed softly. "You pictured wrong. I was busy holding everyone else together." Her eyes softened. "You always were the glue." I shook my head. "Glue breaks too, you know." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Then maybe I can be the tape." By late summer, people stopped seeing Clara as a scandal. She was simply there, a part of the fabric again. Sometimes, I'd catch sight of her walking through the market, her bag full of books and apples, smiling at strangers. And every so often, one would smile back. It's strange how survival can make someone glow differently, not like light, but like something warm that's been tempered by fire. Then came the letter from the state office, the official closure of her case. No fines, no legal pursuit. Just a brief note, investigation concluded. Circumstances deemed extraordinary. Case closed. Clara read it in silence, then handed it to me. "What does this mean?" she asked. "It means you're free," I said. She smiled through tears. "I didn't think that was possible." "Freedom isn't about what you did," I told her. "It's about what you do next." That night, She invited Daniel and the girls to dinner, the first meal they'd shared together under one roof since her death. I sat in the corner, watching as Grace told a story from school. Daniel laughed quietly, and Clara listened, not interrupting, not forcing herself in, just being there. When Ava passed her the salt, their hands brushed, and something small and beautiful flickered between them. Maybe it wasn't forgiveness. But it was peace pretending to be forgiveness, and that was close enough. Later, when everyone left, Clara stood by the window, looking out at the dim streetlights. "Do you think I'll ever be trusted again?" she asked softly. I thought about it for a moment. By everyone? No. But by the ones who matter, you already are. She nodded, tears gathering again. I don't deserve this. Maybe not, I said gently. But grace was never about deserving. When I left that night, I walked home under a full moon. The air was cool, the streets quiet. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted by what had happened. Because the laughter through the wall, that sound that once tore open every wound, had become something else entirely. It had become proof. Proof that even the most broken stories can find their way back to light. It's been almost 3 years since the night I heard that laughter through the wall. 3 years since everything I believed about my family cracked open and let in something raw and painful and, strangely, something alive. Sometimes I think about how grief and grace look almost the same at first glance. Both quiet. Both heavy. But one anchors you to the past, and the other teaches you to breathe again. Clara learned to breathe again. And, in some quiet way, so did I. The girls are grown now, or nearly. Grace turned 16 this spring. She's taller than me, all elbows and long curls, full of questions about the world. Ava's finishing her 2nd year at college, studying fine arts. She called me the other night, her voice bright with pride. "Aunt June," she said, "I sold my first painting." "That's wonderful," I told her. "What was it of?" There was a pause. Then, softly, "Mom." Sitting by a window. I felt my throat tighten. "That's beautiful, honey." "She doesn't know yet," Ava whispered. "But I think she'll cry when she sees it." "I think she will too." Clara visits often now. Not every day, but enough. She brings groceries, books, sometimes flowers. She talks to the neighbors, helps with the church pantry, keeps her promises small and consistent, the kind that build trust like stitches in torn fabric. There's something profoundly ordinary about her life now, and maybe that's what makes it extraordinary. The woman who once vanished into thin air now plants basil on her windowsill, pays bills on time, and sends birthday cards. Every small act, every routine, it's her way of saying, "I'm still here." One afternoon, we sat on my porch drinking iced tea while cicadas sang in the distance. Clara leaned back, eyes half closed, her face turned toward the sun. "I used to think peace was something you earned," she said. "But maybe it's just something you allow." "Allow?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah. I spent so long punishing myself. But peace showed up the moment I stopped trying to prove I deserved it." I smiled. "You sound like Dad." She laughed softly. "Guess I got something from him after all." We sat in silence after that, not awkward silence, but the kind that comes when two people have said everything that needs saying. That fall, Ava invited her mother to her first gallery showcase. Clara hesitated at first. "What if people recognize me?" I smiled. "Then they'll see the woman who lived." When we arrived, the small art hall was filled with warm yellow light and the faint hum of music. Ava's painting hung near the center, the woman by the window. It showed Clara in soft blues and golds, her face serene but distant, eyes half-shadowed by light. The kind of face that looked both broken and holy at once. Clara stood in front of it, her hand trembling slightly. "She remembered my sweater," she whispered. "The one from that last day." I looked at her, and for the first time since she came back, she didn't look haunted. She just looked human. Later, during the reception, a woman approached her, an older woman, elegant but kind-eyed. "You're the mother, aren't you?" Clara nodded carefully. I read about you a while back, the woman said. I'm glad you're still here. No judgment. No accusation. Just a gentle truth. Clara smiled faintly. Me too. That small moment stayed with me, a reminder that sometimes, the world does move on. It learns to see people as more than their worst mistake. Winter came, soft and steady. On Christmas Eve, we gathered again, my apartment, candles flickering, the smell of cinnamon tea and roasted chicken filling the air. Daniel came too, with his partner, and the girls. Clara arrived last, carrying a tin of ginger cookies and a quiet nervousness that always appeared during holidays. The moment she stepped through the door, Grace ran to hug her. Ava smiled, not the polite smile she used to give, but something real. Mom, you made it, she said. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Clara replied, her voice trembling. And for a heartbeat, I saw the family we used to be, not perfect, but whole in the only way that matters, together. During dinner, laughter came easy. Grace told stories from school, Daniel teased me about my overcooked rolls, and Clara listened, smiling quietly, her hand resting on the table beside her daughter's. Halfway through the meal, she reached for Daniel's new partner's hand, a small gesture, but it meant everything. Thank you, she said softly, for taking care of them when I couldn't. The woman smiled back. They're easy to love. I caught Daniel's expression then, something like gratitude, mixed with relief. It struck me how healing sometimes happens in rooms where no one says the word forgive, yet everyone chooses to stay anyway. After dinner, as snow began to fall outside, Clara and I stepped out onto the porch. The street was quiet, lamplight glowing against the white ground. She exhaled, her breath a soft cloud in the cold air. You know, every time I think of that night when you heard me, I still can't believe you didn't tell the world. I looked at her. It wasn't my secret to tell. It was your truth to face. She nodded slowly. You saved me, June. No, I said. I just opened the door. You walked through it. A few days later, I found a letter in my mailbox, no stamp, just my name on the envelope. It was from Clara. June. I don't know if I'll ever be brave enough to say this out loud, so I'm writing it down. When I left, I thought I was protecting everyone. But you're the one who protected me. You carried our family through grief, through truth, through the unbearable. You gave my daughters their mother back even when you had every reason not to. I can never repay you, but I can live differently. And I will. Love, Clara. I sat there for a long while, the letter trembling in my hands. It felt like closure, not the kind that ends a story, but the kind that finally lets you rest inside it. In spring, the town's local newspaper published a feature titled After the Fall, A Family's Second Chance. They asked to interview me, but I declined. Clara agreed, though. When the article came out, there was a quote of hers that I underlined and taped to my fridge. I used to think redemption was being loved again. But it's not. It's being able to look at yourself in the mirror and not turn away. That line stayed with me. Still does. Now, when I walk past the apartment where I first heard her laughter through the wall, I don't feel that chill of disbelief anymore. Someone else lives there now, a young couple with a baby. Sometimes I hear the faint sound of the baby's giggle in the evenings, and I smile. Life goes on. It always does. And the echoes that once haunted you can turn into reminders of how far you've come. One afternoon, while cleaning, I came across the old newspaper clipping, the one from when we thought she was gone. The headline read, Tragic Accident Claims Local Mother. I almost threw it away, but instead, I folded it neatly and placed it beside her new article in my keepsake box. Because both were true, in their own way. One for the woman she was, the other for the woman she became. These days, Clara teaches a small writing class at the library. She says it's for people who want to tell stories they're scared to own. Sometimes I sit in the back just to listen. Her voice, calm and low, fills the quiet room. And I think if our parents could see her now, they'd understand. They'd see that their daughter finally came home. If I've learned anything from all this, It's that love doesn't erase the past. It just makes space for it so it doesn't take up the whole room anymore. And that sometimes, forgiveness isn't a door you open for someone else, it's a window you finally open for yourself, just to let the light in again. That night, before going to bed, I wrote in my journal. I thought I lost my sister forever. But sometimes, love has a strange way of circling back, battered, humbled, but alive. And maybe that's what family really is. Not blood, not duty, but the choice to keep showing up after the truth has already broken you. When I turned off the light, the apartment was still. Outside, the wind brushed against the walls softly, like a memory passing through. And for the first time, the silence didn't ache. It just rested. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from absence, it comes from peace. That's what my home feels like now. Not empty. Not haunted. Just still. When I wake up in the morning, I can hear birds outside my window, the same way I did years ago before everything changed. But back then, their song made me ache. Now it reminds me, even after storms, something always sings again. Sometimes I still hear that laughter in my dreams. It doesn't scare me anymore. In my mind, it echoes through a warm house filled with the smell of coffee and soft conversation, Clara's laughter, alive and free, no longer coming from behind walls or secrets. We survived something that could have destroyed us. And yet, somehow, it became the very thing that taught us how to love each other better. It's strange, isn't it? How the people who hurt us the most can still be the ones we end up praying for the hardest. How forgiveness isn't weakness, but a quiet act of strength, one that says, you don't have to earn my peace anymore. I'm choosing it for myself. When I visit Clara now, her home is filled with color and sound. There's always a candle burning, a half-read book on the table, the scent of vanilla and something baking in the oven. Her walls are covered in art, Ava's paintings, Grace's photographs, even one small framed newspaper clipping. It's the new one, the one that says, a family's second chance. Below it, written in her handwriting, are 3 simple words, still here. Always. And she is. I don't know what I believe about fate anymore. But I do know this, sometimes life gives us back what we thought we'd buried, not to hurt us, but to heal us properly this time. When I think of the night I first heard that laughter through the wall, I no longer remember it as the moment my world fell apart. I remember it as the moment it began to rebuild itself, brick by honest brick, tear by honest tear. Because maybe that's what truth really does. It doesn't destroy. It rebuilds, slower, stronger, and truer than before. There are days when Clara and I sit in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts, and she'll glance at me and smile, that quiet, knowing smile that sisters have. It's not the same bond we had before. It's deeper. Sadder. Realer. Made of scars and shared survival. We don't talk about making up for lost time anymore. We just live the time we have left with a kind of tenderness that only people who've almost lost everything can understand. I think about our parents sometimes, what they'd say if they could see us now. Mom would cry first, of course. Dad would shake his head and mutter something like, "You girls sure took the long road to forgiveness." And maybe we did. But the long road has a way of showing you every truth the short one skips. If you're listening to this story and it stirs something in you, maybe a memory, maybe a wound, I want you to know something. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's not pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's simply deciding that the past no longer gets to decide how loud it speaks in your heart. You don't have to let everyone back in. You don't have to rebuild every bridge that burned. But you can still choose to let the fire die. Because peace, real peace, only grows where blame stops taking root. There's one last thing Clara said to me a few weeks ago that I keep replaying in my mind. We were standing outside the library after her class, and she said, "You know, I used to dream of disappearing. But now I dream of being seen exactly as I am." And I think that's what this story really is. A story about being seen. Not as perfect. Not as broken. Just as human. So tonight, when I turn off the lights and the world gets quiet again, I'll think of her. Of us. Of the laughter that once sounded like loss and now sounds like life. And maybe I'll whisper a little prayer into the dark. For everyone who's still carrying their own hidden grief. For every family split by secrets. For every heart learning how to open again. Because if this story has taught me anything, it's that endings don't always come when the world stops watching. Sometimes, they come quietly in the small act of waking up, looking at the people around you, and realizing that, somehow, you made it through. So tell me, if you found out the person you lost was still out there, living under a new name, would you go looking for them? Would you open the door, even knowing what the truth might cost you? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading, like always. And remember, no matter how far gone something feels, redemption doesn't knock once. It whispers, again and again. You can start over.